while ago, I made a video on self-care and how we often expect for self-care practices to be the thing that saves us or fixes us or helps us feel better, helps us develop more self-love, and how we often still feel disappointed because we do these self-care practices and we still feel sad, still feel disappointed or angry or whatever way we felt before we did them. And in that video, I redefined self-care as not the thing that fixes us or saves us, but as the thing that helps stabilize us in daily life, helps cultivate a self-love practice that should be the baseline for our lives, and also how it's more of a preparation process for deeper, harder work, not the actual deep work we need to do to change our lives or change ourselves in a way that fits our needs better and fits our desires and wishes better. And I also talked about how we can bridge the gap within these self-care practices between how we want to feel and how we are feeling currently, and how we can adapt our self-care practices to fit our individual needs. I've had some new thoughts and mindset shifts since that video on the topic of self-care, and so today I wanted to expand on my ideas from back then a little bit more and talk about how we can create an emotionally and physically sustainable self-care routine and what that even is. The reason I even got the idea for this video was because I was noticing in me and also people that I was talking to that a lot of us can create or take part in self-care practices that require a lot of effort and that are stacked on top of each other and that are only attainable to us when we're already feeling good. But when we're really feeling bad and we could use self-care practices the most, the kind of things that we would usually see as self-care are no longer attainable or are too effortful, take too much energy, or just aren't something that we would easily gravitate toward. And I was thinking to myself, it can't be that self-care practices is something that we can only engage in when we're already feeling good, when we're already feeling fine. That's not the purpose of them. That can be the purpose of them because when we're feeling fine and we're feeling happy, we should still be taking care of ourselves and we can enhance our quality of life and our happiness and our inner peace by taking care of ourselves, for sure. But I think a lot of times when we're not feeling good, we want to fall back on a system and a routine that works. And I think a lot of us struggle with building something like that. And so I think a lot of our routines are not sustainable. And so I think that a lot of these practices that we engage in, like meditating, journaling, eating healthy, working out, skincare, community work, talking to friends, building better, compassionate self-talk. All of these things are wonderful, wonderful practices, but they're not always sustainable in the sense that we can do them under any circumstance in the way that we want to. And I also think that we often expect each and every single practice that we do to save us from feeling what is actually going on. And the last time I was redefining self-care, I was already touching on this a little bit, but what I really wanted to reiterate again is that there is no need and no sense in trying to save ourselves from feeling. We cannot save ourselves from feeling, just as we cannot save other people from experiencing their emotions and their reactions to life. And to expect for something like meditation or taking a walk or whatever it is that you do to completely alleviate every experience you have in life and to leave you feeling neutral or peaceful at all times, I think is a very unattainable, unrealistic, and not really fruitful standard to set. And it's also a standard that is a little sad because life is about having these experiences and reactions and emotions. What self-care, I think, can do is that it helps us process our emotions, helps us be mindful with them, helps us prepare to process them, and it makes it so that we don't get destroyed by our emotional states or that we don't get stuck in them. Our self-care practices can be another thing that helps us move through these emotions with mindfulness and help us to see what needs to change, and so that that processing of those emotions and experiences and the integration of those processes can take place. It can be a preparatory process and a supporting process that holds us from the bottom while we engage in what we need to engage in to get better and to do the necessary change. But so how can we build practices, self-care practices that are more gentle, more realistic, more sustainable, and can actually help when we are feeling down? I think the very, very first thing we need to think about every single time that we engage in self-care activities, whatever that looks like for you and whatever that means for you, is that a delayed response is still a response, and it's a very good response. So what I mean by that is that it is very understandable that at moments when we are not feeling good, we don't immediately get up and do 5,000 things to make ourselves feel better. Because first of all, we can't immediately do that. It's impossible, it's unrealistic, and it's uncompassionate. But it's also, once again, not necessary if we are trying to get to a space where we can sit with our emotions and process them. And I think what's much more important is that the self-care response comes at some point. It doesn't need to come immediately. To give a few examples, if I, for example, am feeling very rushed and very anxious, the last thing I want to do is sit down and meditate. But if I manage to, within 2 hours or 2 days of that very rushed, chaotic experience, to sit down for 5 minutes and do that meditation, then that's wonderful. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it doesn't matter that I didn't do it immediately when I felt the urge to or when I felt the need to, but I couldn't. I did it anyways. It just took me a while to get to a space where I could do that. So a delayed response is still wonderful and is still everything that we could ever ask for. Another example would be if you're the type of person that eats too little when they're stressed and you feel your hunger signals but you don't respond to them immediately, it takes you like 3 hours to respond to them, you still responded, and that's wonderful. And I think you can commend yourself for that. So delayed responses to a certain need or to a feeling of needing self-care, a delayed response to taking care of yourself when necessary is still a good response and is not worse than an immediate response. The second thing, of course, is the content of our self-care practices. What do we actually engage in? And if we're thinking about something that's sustainable and that we can do even in hard moments when we don't have much energy, of course, the first thought is to take something that is smaller and that is gentler. And I think that can be an overwhelming thought to have, because if we already have a self-care practice that like consists of meditating and doing yoga and eating this and that way and taking care of our plants and so forth, and we're thinking about how we can create an entire second set of self-care practices that we do in moments when we can't do those quote-unquote bigger things, I think that's overwhelming and that's a lot to ask for. So the solution that I kind of came up with for myself is to do all my self-care practices in levels. What I mean by that is that each self-care practice has smaller and bigger versions of it. So if, for example, my self-care practice is taking a walk every single day, and on that day it is absolutely impossible for me to get out, a smaller level of that could still be to open a window and spend 2 minutes looking into the sky. And level 2 of that could be taking a walk around the house. And level 3 of that could be taking a walk around the block once. And level 4 is the actual big level of taking a walk. And even that one can be broken down into different time frames and so forth, so you can go as small or as big as you want to. Another example would be level 1 of mindfulness as a self-care practice is doing one dish mindfully. And the rest you can pop in your music or a podcast and dissociate away and do the dishes that way if that helps you get through them. Or not do them at all. You still did one dish and you did it mindfully. That's the point. And level 2 is then a 5-minute meditation, and that one can be moving, or it can be sitting down or laying down, and it can be right before you go to bed and you're allowed to drift off into sleep afterward. Level 3 could be then your 10 to 20-minute meditation. And level 4 can be, and so forth. If you are the type of person that struggles with getting out of bed sometimes, and then you feel very gross at some point. I know I've experienced that when I had depression, and it took everything in me to go and take a shower. Sometimes that's not attainable, and that's a way of caring for ourselves too. So in that sense, having mouthwash right next to your bed is level 1. And level 2 is getting up and washing your face. And level 3 is taking a cat shower at the sink. And level 4 is taking an actual shower. And so forth. We're building our way up or down depending on what we need. And last example, when it comes to journaling, for example, because I know a lot of you came on this channel for journaling, so level 1 would be writing one word. And it could be in your notes app. Don't even open your journal if you have a physical one. Level 2 could be writing a few sentences. And level 3 is actually writing down everything that comes to mind. But It does not need to be extensive. It just needs to fit the moment. It needs to fit the energy level that you have. And it needs to be able to give you some form of satisfaction and some form of relief. And I think as long as we are going in the direction of relief and we are giving ourselves the promise and the follow through on taking care of ourselves, we're doing wonderfully. And I think a very, very big component of doing these smaller levels or doing bigger levels is that it teaches us that no matter how small the act that we are doing it, and it's wonderful and it's doing something. And we are actually listening to ourselves and being the most gentle and compassionate version of ourselves that we can be in that moment. And I think that's what true self-care is. And the third point that I had that I think is one of the most important points as well is to do community-based self-care. Taking care of the community is taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself is taking care of the community. And those two things are always interlinked. Taking care of your environment is taking care of yourself, and vice versa. And of course, that can look like spending time with your friends and doing something nice for your friends, like cooking for them, taking care of them when they're sick, what have you, whatever comes to mind for you. And taking care of friends and family can also obviously be something that crosses boundaries for you, that feels inauthentic or takes a lot of energy. If that is the case, do not do it. It can only be a self-caring and an other-caring act, which is the same thing in the end, if it comes from a place of authenticity that fills you. Other ideas would be helping in a community garden, taking care of an animal, taking care of a plant, helping out at care facilities like elderly homes, becoming part of an association that you like, contributing to some form of an organization or a charity, taking care of other people that are strangers to you by showing them small acts of kindness, paying for someone else's lunch, whatever comes to mind for you and whatever is attainable and feasible for you. And of course, that also involves caretaking and nurturing your relationships, and that means intimacy and building intimacy in small ways by just having fun, spending some time being carefree, but also by engaging in the deep conversations that we need to have. So self-care that is community-based is also being honest about your boundaries, communicating your feelings honestly, communicating your needs, getting help on your self-care activities, letting other people take care of you. And I think that last point is very, very important. Self-care can also be asking for help. Self-care can also be asking for help on caretaking tasks. If it is impossible for you to take a shower and take a walk and meditate and all of that, and your home is looking like an absolute chaos, and you have friends that are good to you like that, or you have family that you can ask for help, ask them for help. Ask them to be there with you, to do stuff for you, and allow yourself to maybe sit with the discomfort of having someone else take care of you if that is something that makes you feel uncomfortable, and move with it and ask for small things and eventually bigger things. We have to rely on each other in this life, and there is nothing more beautiful than that too. And I really want you to remember that community is everything, relationships is everything, and we are in this together absolutely every single second of the day, no matter if we feel it or we don't. And actively engaging in community-based acts and emotions is a wonderful way to keep ourselves above water and not sink any further down. Let me know down below what your thoughts are, what your gentle, sustainable practices are, because obviously I'm always talking from my experience and my perspective, and I would love to learn from you. And let's engage in the comments about how you're doing as well and what you're doing. And I hope to see you on Discord as well very, very soon. We can talk some more on self-care over there. And sometimes I also send in new journaling prompts or meditations that I'm currently doing or yoga practices on Discord, and we share books with each other and podcasts and music. So if you want to become part of that community and build self-care practices on the server as well, you can do that. I'd love to see you there. I hope you're all well, and I'll be thinking of you all. Much love. See you soon.